Identifying and properly disposing toxic and hazardous waste is often something that is not taken into account. Sometimes we take for granted how dangerous these wastes can be. In order to do this properly, we must begin by properly identifying toxic and hazardous waste. To identify toxic and hazardous waste, we must first define it. Republic Act 6969 defines hazardous waste as: hazardous waste are hereby defined as substances that are without any safe commercial, industrial, agricultural, or economic usage and are shipped, transported, or bought from the country of origin for dumping or disposal into or in transit through any part of the territory of the Philippines. Hazardous wastes shall also refer to byproducts, side products, process residues, spent reaction media, contaminated plant or equipment, or other substances from manufacturing operations, and as consumer discards of manufactured products. With this definition as basis, the Administrative Order DAO 2013-22 made a table to identify which wastes qualify as toxic and hazardous to human health and the environment. After identified, these wastes need to be monitored, regulated, and follow correct disposal and management prescribed by DENR. So here we have the first page of the table found in the DAO 2013-22. It is quite lengthy, having a total of 6 pages, so a summary was made using the class and description found in the table. These are the 13 groups of classes found in the table. So for the first type of waste classified in the table, we have wastes with cyanide, where we pay attention to the concentration of cyanide in the waste. Next is acid wastes, where we pay attention to its pH level. Next is alkali wastes, where we also pay attention to pH level. Wastes with inorganic chemicals, where we pay attention to the concentration level of the individual chemicals. For the fifth one, we have reactive chemical wastes. This is more sensitive, so we pay attention to concentration of the chemicals found in it, the pH level, its temperature, and pressure. Next, we have inks, dyes, pigments, paint, resins, latex, adhesives, and organic sludge. This is quite simple. It only includes the waste mentioned. Next, we have waste organic solvents, where we pay attention to solvents containing compounds listed in the PCL or the Priority Chemical List. Next, we have organic wastes. This includes all wastes with grease. Next, we have oil. This includes industrial oil, vegetable oil, tallow, and its sludges. Next, we have containers. This includes all containers that used to hold hazardous waste and toxic chemicals. We have stabilized wastes. This includes wastes that are chemically or physically immobilized and consolidated wastes. Next, we have organic chemicals. This includes all chemicals found in the PCL or the Priority Chemicals List. Lastly, we have miscellaneous wastes. This includes a mixed list of wastes that do not fit in the other classes. Also included in the administrative order is a list of wastes that are exempted. These wastes are specifically exempted for various reasons. One example is household wastes, where having to monitor and regulate substances like pesticide and bleach is impractical.
Disposal and management. Toxic and hazardous waste can complicate our way of life. It could endanger life itself. Toxic waste often contains carcinogens and other dangerous chemicals that could possibly lead to cancer and health problems. That is why we need proper disposal and management of this toxic waste. If you are already in high school or even in college, we have been taught by our teacher or professors the proper way to dispose toxic waste. When we For example, when we chemically mix dangerous liquid that has sulfate on it, we don't just pour it in a drain. Secure landfills are landfills for hazardous solids and containerized waste. It is recommended that hazardous waste must have secure landfills so that it will not spread and affect the community. The secure landfill should be at least 10 feet or 3 meters of separation between the bottom of the landfill and the underlying bedrock or the groundwater table. A secure landfill should have two impermeable liners and leachate collection system. These are the upper system and the lower system. The upper system prevent the accumulation of leachate trapped in the fill, and the lower system serve as the backup of the upper system. The leachate can be collected. It can be pumped to a treatment plant. An impermeable cap is needed in order to reduce the amount of leachate in the fill and minimize the potential for environmental damage. Segregation of hazard waste. Segregation of hazardous waste is important because some chemicals are not compatible with each other. Compatibility is important when handling, packing, storaging, and disposal of chemical waste. Contact between chemicals that could potentially create risks that may affect our environment or spread throughout the location. Sorting out these hazardous waste will make it easier for DNR to dispose the designated waste. For example, chlorine and acetylene. When chlorine reacts with acetylene, it creates like an ignition. The first reaction, it bubbles up, and then as it oxidizes, a reaction happens. A little spark can be produced, which could potentially start a fire. In connection to what I've said earlier, DENR have specific disposal for waste. DAO 2013-22 Section 5.1 states that no waste shall be stored, recycled, reprocessed, treated, and disposed of in facilities other than those facilities prescribed in Section 5.1. In order to get approved, 6 categories must be followed. Category A. Facilities that conduct on-site treatment and disposal of hazardous waste generated within the facility that employs or utilizes technologies from categories B to E. Category B. Commercially treat industrial hazardous waste using thermal technologies. This can be done burn or non-burn. Burn technologies such as plasma, arc pyrolysis, gasification, rotary or fluidized bed incinerator, cement kiln, and other types of burn technologies. The other one is non-burn technologies such as autoclave, microwave, sterilization, hydroclave, and irradiation. Category C. Landfills that only accept hazardous waste for final disposal. For the final disposal, facilities that accept only inert or treated hazardous waste for the final disposal in the dedicated cell. Facilities that can accept hazardous waste for final disposal such as solidified, encapsulated waste under Class K of this procedural manual. Category D. Facilities that recycle or reprocess hazardous waste which are not generated or produced at the facility. Facilities include those that are recover valuable materials such as waste oil, solvents, acids, alkalis, metals, etc. Facilities includes those that are used hazardous waste as input materials or alternative fuel for industrial process. And lastly, facilities includes that those remediate contaminated soil through physical, chemical, or biological treatment. Category E. Facilities that accept and treat hazardous waste which are not generated or produced at the facility using immobilization, encapsulation, polymerization, or similar process. Facilities include that those receive hazardous waste outside the premises and transform physical or chemical characteristics of this hazardous waste by physicochemical or thermal treatment to dispose them into facilities in Category C. And lastly, Category F. Facilities that store hazardous waste which were not generated from the facility awaiting transport for treatment, disposal, or export such as material recovery facilities, buildings that store containers, vessels, or tanks containing hazardous waste, built tanks that store liquid hazardous waste. Proper disposal is a must. We are responsible to our waste. We must do what is right. Once your waste is fitted in the category DNR approves.
Hazardous waste management. Management responsibility and structures. Waste generator is responsible for the proper management of hazardous waste from the time they are generated until they are rendered non-hazardous, as certified by EMB, Registered Hazardous Waste Treater or Recycler. Requirements for proper waste management. Waste generator, regardless of size, shall adhere to the following waste management requirements. Number 1. Waste storage requirements. Waste generator shall comply with the storage and handling requirements. Storage facilities shall meet the following requirements: be accessible in case of emergencies and for purpose of inspection and monitoring. Be enclosed but adequately ventilated. Have floors that are impermeable to liquids and resistant to attack by chemicals, not slippery, and constructed to retain spillages. Be properly secured and not easily accessed by unauthorized persons. Have provision for proper waste segregation in accordance with the following: chemicals properties and waste type. Chemical properties. Waste with incompatible chemical properties that could react with each other, such as strong acids and strong bases, should be placed in separate containers and kept in separate spill containment areas. Waste type. Hazardous waste shall be segregated from low-level radioactive, mixed, healthcare, and non-hazardous waste. In addition, solids, liquids, and gases shall be placed in separate containers and kept in separate spill containment areas. Have provision for proper drum handling and storage. Have full emergency response equipment corresponding to the class of waste being stored in potential emergencies associated with it, and ensure that all categories of waste allowed to be stored within a prescribed period are treated or sent to appropriate TSD facilities. Number 2. Pre-transport requirements. Export of hazardous waste shall comply with the requirements of EMB. Number 3. Use of registered waste transportation and TSD facilities. Waste generator is required to avail of the services of waste transporters and TSD facilities that are duly registered by EMB Central Office and whose permits are valid within the period that the wastes are being transported and treated, stored, or disposed of. Number 4. Use of the online hazardous waste manifest system and transporting hazardous waste for off-site treatment, storage, and disposal. Transport of hazardous waste from the generator premises to the TSD facility is covered by a permit to transport and accompanied by manifest. Number 5. Confirmation of treatment or disposal completion. TSD facility shall issue certificate of treatment within 45 days after the wastes are received for treatment. The waste generator shall secure the original copy from the TSD facility and includes copy of this document as part of the quarterly reporting to EMB. Original copy shall be maintained at all times in the facility. Import of hazardous waste intended for disposal is prohibited. Import of recyclable materials containing hazardous substances intended for recycling and recovering may be allowed subject to the requirements of EMB.